Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss how the two Tory leadership contenders, Sunak and Truss, seem to be creating yet another contradiction in Brexit as they talk about reducing our access to foreign markets. Would you look at that? Seems Truss wants to close our port markets after all. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. And we're back. Hopefully my hospital appointment later won't force me to abandon the studio again. But for now, all feeling good and we can get back to a sort of normal. As normal as it's possible to be when you consider that our next Prime Minister is considered to be very likely Liz Truss. And both she and her distant opponent Rishi Sunak have been blowing another hole in Brexit again, however, inadvertently. See, when it comes to these plans to leave the single market and the customs union that we had years ago, which was never part of any Leave campaign proposal before the referendum, by the way, trade experts asked, well, why would you want to shrink our economy? What are you on about? Well, you close off access to the EU, we can't sell as much. Because the EU not only represents a large market of hundreds of millions of customers and right on our doorstep, which is reason enough not to raise trade barriers for any country in the world, but it's also some of the world's wealthiest customers. Not to worry, said the Brexiteers, we'll put up barriers with the EU, sure, yeah, that can't be helped, but we'll lower them around the world. Where? Well, the United States. This was always a complete non-starter. The United States is as protectionist as any major economy, and a UK outside of the bargaining power of the EU would have been easy prey. Not even speculation. Trump's administration wrote a trade proposal that gave us nothing but had us been forced to have public contracts go to American companies wherever possible. It was a deal that meant we'd have to buy American. And yes, a proposal is a starting point. You go, well, that's just their starting position. You move from it. Yes, in a normal trade negotiation, but we've had a few post-Brexit trade deals now. And what you notice is they end up looking an awful lot like the other side's starting proposal. No disrespect, but if New Zealand, a country with a very small population, outnumbered by sheep for goodness sake, and on the other side of the world, can pretty much force us to accept their initial proposal in a trade deal, how easy would it be for the mighty US? Just across the ocean to get everything it wants. No, there wasn't even a hypothetical chance to even start the process of compensating for lost EU trade with a US deal. But it's not happening anyway. So the USA has gone for a Burton in the Brexit plans. And it doesn't matter who the president's in a few years. So now it's Biden being awkward. It doesn't matter who it is. There's nothing bipartisan about the diplomatic situation with Ireland. It's got cross-party support. No UK government that runs roughshod over the Northern Ireland peace process is getting a trade deal with America. And the Tories are utterly committed to screwing Ireland over, as, if we're honest, they have been for the last 2 centuries at least. We have a trade deal with Japan, but it's on worse terms than the one the EU have. The government tried to claim it's a bit better, but they did that by comparing the deal we have with the one that didn't exist at all with the EU several years ago. The Japan-EU deal is relatively new, but it is done now. It exists. So you have to compare it to that. If we were in the EU, that's the deal we would have. Ours is worse. So when it comes to compensating for EU trade, America's a dead loss. Japan has a negative impact compared to what we could have had. Canada, we're looking at something quite similar to Japan. Canada have made it clear they're not going to sacrifice their dairy industry by giving us extra quotas for cheese, something Truss seems to also be keen on. Same applies to other goods as well, just that Truss keeps going on about cheese. So just as with Japan, we can only have what the EU don't use. So although an enhanced deal with Canada is beneficial, we may as well have it, all it does is limit the damage. It won't be as good as the arrangement we could have had as EU members, and it's certainly not going to be better. So which of the other major economies? India? Sure, but all they're interested in are visas. They're not that bothered about buying a load of our rubbish. As for services, they're more keen to sell to us than buy from us as well. There's also history with India. It seems that the country, which was invaded and colonised by the British for quite a while, is enjoying having the upper hand now. The chances of getting a good trade deal on our end are basically zero. I suppose if the UK increased the total number of visas it was willing to issue, massively expanded immigration, allowed Indian citizens easier access to these visas, we may get some more workers for our struggling NHS and other industries badly affected by the lack of access to the European labour market. That would be a benefit. That would provide some small benefit. So we may as well have the deal as not. Not sure what the gammons will think to getting rid of foreign European workers to be replaced by people from India, but we'll be finding out if the India deal happens. Where else? France, Italy and Germany are all in the EU. We've knackered our access to their markets good and hard. The Brexiteers don't even apologise for that. So in the top 10 economies of the world, really just leaves China. There's South Korea I'll mention a bit later, but there's China. That's the big one. Again, even this theory, it's a tough nut to crack. Just like every other major economy, it's highly protectionist. And this is the only country in the top 10 which isn't even democratic. It just does what it wants. And what it wants is to sell and not really buy. This is particularly important to them as they are in decline a bit. It means doubling down on their balance of trade. So China were not realistically going to give us significantly better access to their markets. But now it gets even better. As part of the Tory leadership contest, Sunak and Truss are both trying to outdo each other in terms of who can be the biggest bellend. I can screw our economy over the best. No, I can. I can commit the most human rights abuses. No, I can. Well, Sunak has described China as the largest threat to Britain and to international security and prosperity. Truss has said that Sunak's too soft on China. Bloody hell, if that's too soft on China, what's she going to say about them? The answer, of course, is that neither are going to do anything as Prime Minister. They won't lift a finger. But the fact that they're publicly forced to denounce China as an enemy of this country is not at all consistent with the policy of trying to get what was already a stunningly unlikely trade deal, granting our exporters easier access to their fairly impenetrable markets. So the situation is really simple. Erecting hugely unnecessary and daunting trade barriers with the EU has massively reduced our GDP. When it comes to the rest of the top 10 countries, we're either looking at deals which are worse than with the EU, in which case it's a further negative to our GDP, or no deal at all, in which case maybe no worse, but it's not better. And as I said before, I hadn't mentioned South Korea, but that's because it's not an extra, it's another carryover category. Basically, it's about the same as the EU have, but we don't get extra quotas. So in practical terms, we have slightly less export power compared to being in the EU. It's very similar to the Canada situation. So we're not compensating for our lost Brexit trade. And you cannot claim we'll just get it with a load of other countries. They don't have enough money. Seriously, if every other country in the world were somehow desperate for our goods and were willing to open up their markets to us, I mean, first of all, why didn't they just do that while we were in the EU? And secondly, they couldn't afford to buy as much as our richer neighbours could. Look at this. These are the GDPs of the top 10 countries. I sometimes have a habit of forgetting to put it up when I talk about graphs, the charts. Hopefully it is there. Look how quickly it drops off from the top down. Even in the top 10 list, it drops down massively quickly. Beyond the top 10 really does down to nothing. Wealth is not evenly distributed. It's not evenly distributed in this country. It's not evenly distributed in the world. The top 10 economies have 68% of the total GDP of the planet. There's what, about 250 odd countries? The top 10 of them have 68% of the total GDP. And our post-Brexit trade deals with that 68% of the GDP of the planet are either on equal or worse terms compared to being in the EU. Even our trade deals with Australia and New Zealand are, according to the government's own figures, a possible GDP negative. Who spends time negotiating a trade deal that could realistically end up being worse than nothing? That's what Brexit is. That's what more of the media should be reporting. There's no compensating for our economic losses. The Brexiteers thought we could go back to how things were before we joined. Well, guess what? We are doing. Before we joined, we were doing very badly indeed. That's why we joined. Our governments were big supporters of the political reasons for the European community. Absolutely. Indeed, we helped create it. Massive fan of the peace project side of it, but we were never bothered about being part of it. We wanted it to exist. We needed it to exist. We just didn't want to be part of it. We joined because we were economically screwed. After decades of complacency, because we reversed that trend as members, we've now pissed it all away. That is the reality. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.